Okay, so right now, as we speak, a hugely important ceasefire between the United States and Iran is about to expire. The negotiations are happening in Islamabad, Pakistan, and honestly, they are in a dead sprint against time. The clock is ticking down, and the stakes, well, they just could not be any higher.
Take a look at this, $98 a barrel, and it's climbing. Now you have to understand, this isn't just some number you see on the news. This number directly affects the gas you put in your car, how much your groceries cost, even your electricity bill. It's the headline number of a crisis that's getting bigger by the day.
And this number? This is why we're all feeling the pinch. That's a 36% jump in the price of oil in just 53 days. I mean, think about that. Less than 2 months ago, it was $72 a barrel. That kind of speed is a massive shock to the entire global system, and it's a direct punch to your wallet.
Which brings us to the terrifying question on everyone's mind. Because if these talks fall apart today, we could be looking at oil prices that could completely throw the global economy into chaos. So how in the world did we get to this cliff edge, and what happens now? Let's break it all down.
To really get a handle on the urgency of today, we have to rewind the clock a little bit. This whole crisis didn't just pop up overnight, but wow, did it escalate fast over the last couple of months.
So let's just walk through this timeline really quick. It all kicked off on February 28th when the US and Israel launched strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran's response? It was swift and it was huge. In March, they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which instantly choked off 20% of the entire world's oil supply. By early April, Pakistan actually managed to broker a fragile ceasefire, bringing both sides to the table. We saw this brief glimmer of hope on April 17th when the strait reopened, but that lasted for maybe a few hours before gunfire was reported and it was shut right back down. And that brings us to today. The ceasefire is expiring and the talks are going absolutely nowhere. So that's the what. That's the timeline of what happened. But to understand the why, you gotta look a little deeper than the headlines. This whole thing really boils down to 3 key dynamics. And if you can get your head around these 3 things, all the chaotic headlines and the news reports are going to start to make a whole lot more sense.
So first, we're going to look at Pakistan's absolutely crucial role in all this. Second, we'll talk about how the Strait of Hormuz has been turned into this incredibly powerful economic weapon. And finally, we'll get to the real endgame here, which, believe me, is about way more than just nuclear weapons. It's all about who gets to control the world's energy.
This quote really gets right to the heart of it. Pakistan's role here is totally unprecedented. So why them? Why Pakistan? Well, it's because they have something nobody else does, a certain level of trust from both Washington and Tehran. To Iran, they're a fellow Muslim nation. To the US, they're a longtime strategic partner. And it's this unique position that allowed them to ask the American president to stand down his military. And he did. It's an incredible diplomatic gamble, and Pakistan is right at the center of it all.
Okay, on to our second key point, the weapon. And the weapon at the center of this whole conflict is the Strait of Hormuz. It's a geographical choke point. I mean, at its narrowest part, it's just 21 miles wide. And it is the single most important waterway for global energy on the planet. And Iran? Well, it controls the coastline. And that number, 20 million, that shows you just how powerful this weapon is. 20 million barrels of oil have to squeeze through that tiny strait every single day. So by closing it, Iran isn't just making a military threat, they're waging economic war. And this doesn't just hurt the US, it hurts everyone. Allies in Europe and huge importers like China, everyone feels it. And this all brings us to the fundamental deadlock. It's a standoff. On one side, you have the US demanding Iran end its nuclear program for good and reopen the strait permanently. On the other side, Iran is demanding all economic sanctions be lifted, plus a guarantee of no more military strikes. Right now, neither side feels like they can back down an inch, and that's created this incredibly dangerous stalemate. And all the while, China, which is the single biggest buyer of oil that goes through that strait, is watching very, very closely. So that brings us to the final and most important question. With this kind of deadlock, where do we go from here? As that clock runs out today, this whole situation can really only break in one of 3 ways. So let's take a look at the possible futures.
All right, here they are, the 3 scenarios. First, there's the deal. This is the best case. A breakthrough happens, the ceasefire gets extended, oil drops back to a manageable $80 a barrel. We're looking at about a 30% chance of that. Then you have the nightmare. Talks completely collapse. Military action ramps up, and oil prices could spike past $150, which would almost certainly trigger a global recession. That has a terrifying 25% chance of happening. But the most likely scenario, at 45% probability, is what's being called the slow bleed. In this future, there's no big deal, but there's no full-scale war either. The strait just stays this partially closed, highly contested zone, keeping oil prices stuck above $100. It's a slow economic drain that could be just as damaging in the long run.
So the world is pretty much holding its breath. The next 24 to 48 hours are going to decide everything. The price you pay at the pump, the stability of the entire global economy, and whether we tip over the brink into a major war. It all comes down to what happens next in Islamabad. The question isn't just for the diplomats, it's for all of us. Which future are we about to walk into?